And then, yeah, fuck.
I
Let me,
can't I can't think of a single guy in the fucking spearfishing industry that's not.
yeah, and I think, dude, that's a good point because,
It is like 99% type A personalities all through this fucking sport.
well, and I feel, well, let's fucking talk about that. Hold on, let's just that's an introduction. Miss Jerry from Neptonics, welcome to the show, Jerry. Welcome to Spearfactor.
Thanks, man.
All right, so we got Jerry here. He just said when we were talking about the spearfishing industry, as you heard. Why the industry? Why do you think it is that everybody's so fucking type A?
Man, I just think it falls right into the whole hunter adventure sport, man. Like it's not a passive sport.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. And the
Not
other
playing
thing too,
clarinets, right?
yeah, and it's there's something else there other than just the drive to make money. There's like just
Yeah,
who we
for sure.
like, yeah, because we're not fucking rolling in the dough in this thing, but definitely like take the bull by the horns. And I think for me personally, if you see something and you're like, I could do it better, well, or I could do it better, or I think there's a better way to do that, or something. Um, and you just fucking do it. Takes a little bit of like, then you have the initiative to go and do it. It's like that type of person.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Neptonics, I think Neptonics. I've had you on the show before, but I think that with Neptonics that I keep going back to is like it's like a one-stop shop, all like digital spearfishing store. But your inventory is always seems to be evolving as well. Like you're always kind of coming up with new stuff. So along those lines, like in the last year, what's new with Neptonics? Anything new out there?
Nothing groundbreaking new, man. We've made some new bags for travel diving and travel spearfishing. Made a handful of like new float lines, like integrated bungees to the float lines on like longer sections, more specifically built towards like dogtooth tunas, bigger wahoos, and stuff like that. The That type of diving and that spearfishing market has seemed to like been growing a lot lately, and so there's been I wouldn't say a giant need for it, but there's been like some gear that we've had that wasn't performing optimally to it, so kind of corrected some of that gear as well, and some bigger, heavier shafts that hit a bit harder and some different kind of things like that.
Yeah, can you kind of talk us through that setup? Why ideal for dogtooth for the people who don't know?
Yeah, so what we were finding, like ideally, like I mean, at the end of the day, dogtooths are just giant mackerels, right? But they're called tunas, so they're really soft like a wahoo, but they have it's just as much or more power than a yellowfin tuna. So in the past, it was like the whole idea was like a Blue Water Pro float line with no stretch or nothing like that. So which is awesome. The float lines are plenty strong, but it was causing like massive gear failures, like somewhere between your shooting line or it ripping out of the fish or your slip tip failing or something like that. So it's like this fine line of where you need it to stretch a bit. So it takes out that shock and it's not like hitting a brick wall of three atmosphere floats or two atmosphere floats in a small one or something like that. So you need it to stretch some, but not stretch enough to get to the bottom. Like the 6 foot integrated bungees we had on our Pressure Pros wasn't enough, and then the tuna bungees were just too much. Like they just it stretched out so much that they would hit to the bottom and that was it. They'd tie up on you. So I just started playing around with some different configurations and made like 4 different ones and went on a few trips and found one that just seemed to be working. It was like the right amount of stretch. So what we ended up doing was I took our normal tuna bungees, like 100 footer would stretch to 200 feet. So what I did was I took our tuna bungee material, I took 50 feet of that, integrated it into a 50-foot static float line like the Blue Water Pro. But instead of making that 50-foot bungee stretch to 100 feet, I stopped it with only 75 feet of core in the inside of it. So it'd stretch enough with like a really heavy rubber on it to actually slow down those big fish so it wouldn't break off or cause those gear failures that we were talking about, but still try to kind of pin them to the top so they couldn't get into the reef. But that's still not 100%, but it's the best we found so far.
Yeah, interesting. Because I kind of went back and forth with my own experience on it, where they have that Rife has their armor for reef, their armor shoot. Yeah, and it's great, but I ran into the same problem you're talking about. Is that yeah, you want to keep them off the reef, but how do you keep them off the reef without destroying, like, because it just hits so hard, and then you need monster floats to keep them off the reef, and then you have this rigid line, and you're usually hunting them, right right at the reef there, right when the drop off is, and they just go right for that drop off to try to break you off. But I kind of thought, then I went back, I'm like, do you need like a really short bungee, like short, like maybe I'm only going to dive to 40 feet today for this dog tooth, which seems to, you know, but then there were days right there at 60 and you're like, shit, can I stretch this bungee all the way down to where I shoot it, and then it's constant pressure and it's but you know, so there was always a gray area, and doing that integrated kind of setup kind of led us to a little bit of like morphing into the combination of I want some spring, but I want that thing to stop at some point. But we never did we just kind of put a shorter bungee. We didn't do same amount of bungee like you're talking about with the like 75 feet of line or 70 or 75 feet of line or anything like that. When you did some trips to test your, where did you end up going? Did you go to Tonga or different places?
I did it all. I did all Africa.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I've been there 3 years in a row now, man. I love it there.
So let's talk about, I want to talk about those trips, because I think on that trip, did someone get a 200 pounder or close, right?
Yeah. 2 of us got them like at that weight range. Like Jamie's was like 211, and then I got one at like 189 and a half, I think it was. And then on the trip after that, my friend Hunter got one that was like 180. Don't quote me on this, man. Like, I don't want to tell you the wrong number, but I want to say his was like 187 or maybe 191 or something like that. Another monster fish.
So who did you end up going with?
Diving over there with Extreme Blue Water Charters. From, Ballard, yep.
Yeah. So how long are those trips? You said, I think we talked before, I think I heard you on Shrek talking about doing like, you do pretty long trips if you're going to make it go.
So I just, when I go on like something like that long and that financially committing and like that time committing, I try to get there like in country, like 4 to 5 days ahead of the boat leaving, just to allow for bags and screw ups and stuff like that. But when I go, it's with all the travel time there and back, getting there ahead of that and then getting all your stuff done, it's about just over 3-week trip.
Right.
But it's also a 10-day live aboard trip too. So 8 days.
That's amazing, man. And so you're diving just what, like 7 hours? I mean, what's your diving day like?
Man, they're long days, man. You could do them longer, man, but we typically wake up 6:30, 7 a.m., a small light breakfast, and then we're usually in the water by like 8:30, something like that. And then until we're either too tired to dive anymore or the sun's setting. Like, kind of just depends on how fishy it is and the conditions that day. Like, some days it's super fishy and you've shot 10 fish a piece and you're kind of out of it, and other days it's like really slow and we just keep pushing at it.
So do you have any tips for, obviously for clearing, like staying hydrated? I think we all fall into this where I don't get out of the water. And if I do, it's literally to move from point A to point B. I try to slam an electrolyte or something and then get back in the water. And the biggest thing that I have noticed for me was cramps. And I was just curious, like, what kind of stuff you've encountered with that and how do you deal with it?
Man, I've been pretty lucky with like the hydration and cramps, but I've put a lot of thought into it and pretty methodical with it. So before bed, I make sure I drink 2 quarts of water, like literally like right before you go to sleep, you chug it down just the same way you would in the military, right? And then you'll wake up 2 or 3 times a night to piss, whatever, it's part of it. And then I usually have like BCAAs in it, like the branched chains amino acids with like electrolytes in it.
Yep.
Pick a flavor you like and like that a lot. And then so I'll drink that before bed, and I'll have that same thing. I'll fill it up and have it with me next night. So every time I do wake up to piss, I chug a bunch more of it all night long. And then in the morning with breakfast, instead of like when you're having your coffee, drink another 1.5 to 2 of those. If you can get a gallon in before you leave, all the better. And then fill that same jug up, take it with you on the boat, and between every drift, you're drinking on it. So if you play it all right between like the time you go to sleep and in the morning, you've had already a gallon to a gallon and a half of fluids in you, and then another half a gallon throughout the whole day. So it keeps you really hydrated. But if you don't do that, you won't be able to equalize by day 3.
And that's why I asked, because that seems to be the key to equalizing, is being, a lot of people don't know this, but is really being hydrated, because once those tubes close up, that's it. Okay. Yeah. And what are the water depths you guys are diving at? Are you having to dive? I mean, it depends on the fish, I guess, but it seems like over there in Africa, it's, it can vary significantly depending on the species, but also depending on the spot. Like,
Yeah, man. So to answer that question, man, like the spots are all over the place. Like the upper sides of the reef, like your wahoo, your yellowfin tuna, man, 30, 40 foot dives all day long. Like you'll get your good fish. The reef fish can be a bit deeper. They're like 70 to 80 for the most part, like the long nose emperors, the red emperors, all that kind of stuff. The doggies, man, I shot one of my big ones really shallow, and the rest of them, unfortunately, are super deep.
of
Yeah,
course.
I got one good one that was like, I think I pulled the trigger like at 55 feet and landed him. And then most of the other ones were well past 80, and some of the real big ones were like at 110, 120, 125, just stupid depths.
It's funny because, um, my little experience with big dog tooths, and I say big meaning over, maybe 80 pounds or bigger for
Hmm.
where I was, they all seem to be deep, like, and deep, like 100 feet, maybe around 100 feet. I saw the shallowest I saw, like a big one, was maybe 50. Um, and it's something funny about them. I don't know if you noticed this, but they seem to come like the big boys, like they come through. They really don't give you much of a shot often. So it's like we like I saw them look at a flash, or they just kind of swam by us to look at us. They were at 100 feet. There was two, like, well, probably 100 pounds or much bigger, just cruised by, didn't seem to give a shit. But then you have all these curious pups, it's kind of swimming around real shallow. Did you see anything like that in Africa?
Yeah, man. Sometimes they're real curious, man. Like if you have a decent breath hold at that depth, you can get their curiosity. And um, if you take like a throw flasher with you and you just hold it in your hand, obviously you're not throwing it, and you can like wave it at them a little bit. Sometimes that'll get their attention and their curiosity and bring them in. But you definitely have to wait them out at that depth. It's not like a touch and go dive at 120. Like if you're not down there for 30, 35 seconds, like you're fucking wasting your time.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Yeah,
That sounds
it's
like some
awful.
Florida shit.
Truly it fucking sucks, man. But it's part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what makes it so special, to be honest, with all
Yeah.
that stuff.
That being said, man, like there's several guys I know that shot in really big ones, like well over 100 pounders and 130 pounders, and they're 40 to 60 foot. And I think the key is to getting them really shallow. Is someone's got to sacrifice the damn shooting the rainbow runner in the tail and leaving that thing alive.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a big that's a big go-to, I know, for a lot of guys. And colder water, trying to get the updwelling, and when they get cold water, just, and we always chum like a whole mackerel.
Mm-hmm.
But that rainbow runner phone a friend thing, dude, shoot that thing, and it's just game on.
Yeah, and also too, like don't like underestimate someone who just shot a doggy or a GT or a wahoo or something like that. Like any of that commotion brings those things around. It doesn't have
Right.
to be a rainbow runner, but they like from a food standpoint, they seem to love rainbow runners and wahoo.
And wahoo, that's cool. I've never seen him go after a wahoo.
We've shot the wahoo, like they don't go after it like they'll go after the rainbow runner, but they definitely come and get real curious about it. But
Yeah.
it's really neat to see. But the rainbow runner, it's definitely on their food chain. Like some of the big ones I've shot, they're throwing up rainbow runners as long as my arm.
They're
Fuck,
so good to eat too, rainbow runners.
fuck, I know, right?
Oh man. So for and I feel like you can apply that especially to our yellowtail kingfish here.
Mhm.
I tell everybody, if you're the buddy, when your buddy shoots one, just get ready to dive, because there's always that dumb friend that's like, "Oh, dude, what happened? Are you okay?" And then he gets
Yeah,
blasted too. Like, yeah, same with bluefin even
at
too.
least they
Like,
die together. They're not in misery.
yeah, yeah, but you always get a good circle. Like at least one of them, like, will give you a circle, I'll give you a chance.
Hmm.
Um, with the tropics though, how was the shark situation over there?
Man, that's a loaded question, man. Some days they don't bother you at all, and other days you can't get the damn things off of you, and it's the same like locations. Kind of interesting. But for the most part, they don't bother you too much. But if you shoot those fish and you don't have them up within like 5 to 10 minutes, man, your chances are you're going to get sharp.
Yeah, what would you say, like, your ratio of, because I've talked to Chris Coates about this, landing, say you shoot 10 fish, how many are you going to land, do you think, depending on the shitty days, I guess you could say?
So if you shoot 10 and you land 4, you're doing great.
All right, it's funny because Chris Coates and he and I were talking, and we came up with the same thing: 2 versus 10. If it's really shitty, you might,
Yeah.
and people hate that, but it's true. It's like you might land 2 of the 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good.
And a lot of it's just, I think a lot of it is, I mean, there's so many factors, right? Like how deep you are when you shoot it. Because I feel like the deeper you are, like the lower the probability of landing it, just because they're already on the damn bottom. Like your shooting line's still slack and it just rakes you all over the bottom. So there's a lot of that problematic shit going on too. But also when you're deeper, I feel like the sharks are down a bit more with them at that point too, for some odd reason. So I think the deeper you go, like they just have full acceleration. Like all that stuff just comes tight real quick.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't even remember. I think with blasting them at the different depths, like I know what gets more. What I feel like what gets like any diving, I guess, it gets real friggin' dangerous because when you pull the trigger that deep with your doggy, it's like you want to set it and make sure that everything's good. And really, what I find, like you want to make sure it's good to go, and you're like, oh, okay, I got it, good, 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 and you're fucking around down there, and then you don't. I didn't realize, especially being focused, is like, oh, I'm fucking deep, like, and you just keep kicking up. And if you dig around down there, trying to mess with that float line, let your spotters deal with the float line. Just get back. Like that was one of the things that, especially because it's so clear and
Mm-hmm.
warm. Usually where those fish are, you're like, I'm good, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm at, I've been kicking for a minute now, and I'm only at 70 feet or 60 feet.
Yeah,
You
it's
know what I
close to
mean?
that. Yeah, for
Uh,
sure. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, to answer that question. I mean, I would say with some luck, you would land 4 out of 10, and that's a combination of gear failures, sharks, the whole bit. Like there's just some shit's just out of your control.
right, right. How
And
much did you guys go
putting them to
ahead?
sleep, really putting them to sleep and stoning them is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, not all of us are MJK or whatever.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many of them I've shot in the head where in my mind, where that fish, any other like amberjack or African pompano or wahoo or a yellowtail or a sea bass or anything else that you'd shoot right there would be completely asleep. And those things don't seem to die the same way.
that's a
So
great point because I don't know if they have like a big brain or something because I don't think I've ever seen any.
I'm quite confident there's not one in there.
Dude, I've never seen. I don't think I've ever seen a friend of mine personally stone one, and
Yeah,
they're all good shots.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, man. Okay, so Africa was about 3 weeks long. I think that's a good point you bring up as far as planning ahead and behind. When you get on the boat, is there a lot of transiting in that area? Like, I mean, you're going out to was it Latham Island and all those reefs and stuff,
Oh,
or is that a different area?
I built Latham out there now, and Lazarus out there, a bunch of those little remote pinnacles, and the whole like that whole Matendo Canyon area. It's a really really beautiful, special place.
Yeah. Besides the doggies, how you guys shot GTs? Do you shoot GTs or?
Yeah, I shot GTs, long nose emperors. My buddy Lee got a sailfish on this last trip. On the trip before that, my buddy Hunter got a nice big marlin on it. So I mean, yeah, the possibilities are endless. I got a couple big yellowfin out there. They've got yellowfin out there. Good fish all around.
The yellowfin? I've had a couple people hit me up about yellowfin, and I was,
Mhm.
honest. I'm like, I don't have the most success with those fish. Number one, seeing them where we are, and then getting them to come in. They're
Mhm.
usually traveling like Mach friggin' 2. And
Mhm.
if you do, it's because for out here, you see them on a kelp patty and they're just circling to, and might get a little bit of a chance. But with yellowfin, when you're targeting yellowfin exclusively,
Mhm.
because I imagine when you go on those trips, like for me and my friend, we have like a hit list, and it's like, okay, check that, check that, check that. Like, let's try to get, and then it is whatever shows up too. That's always
Sure,
kind of
sure.
goes out the window. But um, we have goals, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
How do you tend to approach yellowfin? Do you have any tricks? Because I remember, I mean, I listened to you on Noob Spiro, and you were talking about the wahoo, we swim away
Mhm.
from them,
Yep.
which I thought was good shit. But do you have any tricks for tricks for yellowfin?
Yeah, man. Like, so what works for me with yellowfin, I'm not saying this will work for everyone. You got to like kind of anticipate that fish a lot. But what works really well for me is like to position yourself where your gun can shoot to the flasher. So don't ever get out of range of your flasher, right? So if you couldn't shoot the flasher, you're too far away from it, in my opinion. And then keep that constant, like very small, steady stream of chum, like almost like breadcrumbs to follow it home. and keep that chum where it's like very near the flasher as well. And when you dive down, like you have to like stare at the flasher and use your peripheral and then aim at a piece of chum that you think the tuna is going to eat. And then if you do that, because there's no way to track those big blue water guns on a fish that's moving that fast. And then if you aim at that chum, when you see it coming out of your peripheral, pull the trigger at the chum, and you'll usually hit them like somewhere like behind the gills, mid body. So that's what works for me. But it takes a bit of practice, and it's definitely a different hunting technique. But once you figure out how to do them like that, you'll get them almost every time.
Provided you're in the right location, everyone.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, if you're seeing yellowfin at that point, you'll get them. Is what I'm saying.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not seeing yellowfin, like I mean, that's a fucking foolish strategy, right? Like I didn't even bother diving on the jump until you start seeing the shadows of them.
Right, the shadows down deep. Or do you look for surface action as well?
I look for some surface actions some of the time, man. But for the most part, man, like you're looking for the action deep. Like you'll see them, like as the chum gets deeper, you'll see them like eating that. So then slow down like the amount of chum that's going out, so you can actually bring them up because they'll follow it all the way to the damn surface.
Amazing.
At least most of the time they will. You know, every now and then, like you might be on a weird moon or a weird tide or something where they want to stay deep. But I mean, that's one of those fish I've seen them on the surface and I've watched them go down to 100 feet like for no reason. And then they come right back up. They do what they do.
Yeah, what I've noticed with them is they're moving fast. It's an interesting fish. It's beautiful and delicious. What do you have any particular areas that like? Have you been to Panama and hunted them down there with Pete?
I have. I've shot several of them down there. I've been down there with Pete before. I've been down there a handful of times with myself before I knew Pete. And yeah, I think I've dove Panama about 6 or 7 times, man.
Oh wow. Did you notice a difference between the yellowfin that you encountered in Africa, East Africa, and then in Panama or in the Pacific?
I feel like they're a lot harder to hunt in Panama compared to what they are in Africa. Africa, they seem to be real simple and kind of lackadaisical and lump, but I don't know if that's just because they don't get a lot more pressure there, or I'm not really sure. On Panama, they're definitely a bit more skittish, but that being said, they don't seem to be as erratic in Panama either. You got to have a long breath hold and wait them out and hope they're curious about your flasher there.
That's good to know. Yeah, it's interesting. I would agree with that. I did read somewhere that tuna species, or like true tunas, are pretty smart, especially bluefin. I want to say smart, but I don't know if it's saying they're smart because they learn. They show the ability to learn to listen to boat like frequencies and all of this stuff. So if they're able to, I know here I've seen it firsthand when they get a lot of boat pressure, forget about it for the next week.
Got it.
Because people just drive right over them, and then you get nothing but skittish fish after like a 3-day weekend.
Yeah, for sure. That makes
sense. Yeah. So I just assume it makes sense. Panama, I mean, I would assume they're getting a lot more pressure than East Africa, but
you'll see them a lot, at least when I've been to Panama, but I haven't been to Panama in a long time now, man. So keep that in mind. I don't think I've been to Panama since like 2016, maybe 17 timeframe. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And man, like you would see them, I wouldn't say every drift, but you would see them like every 3rd or 4th drift. You just maybe get lucky to get a shot or 2 a day.
Yeah. That sounds correct. Sounds about right. Did you do any shallow or reef diving in Panama? I've heard with all the rivers in Central America, it does seem that the visibility can be a major problem, especially depending on the season, if it's a rainy or what, with all that sediment coming. But did you get a chance to dive closer to shore around there?
Yeah, man, I've dove closer to the shore there. I mean, I've shot broomtails there, the queen snappers there, the mullet snappers. I've shot those are some of those are on the deeper spots too, though. I've shot plenty of caberas there. I've shot snook up in the river mouths. Yeah, a lot of cool fish there to shoot.
Yeah, I was just curious about diving some of these places where you just see the different. Everybody gets so focused on pelagics, and there's some really cool reef fish out there. Like you're talking about the longnose emperor. I mean, what a fun fish to hunt! Like,
yeah, that is one of the hardest, coolest fish in my opinion to hunt. They're so fucking challenging.
Yeah, was it you that did a post about it? I think when you got back from your trip, maybe you said something about a longnose emperor. I don't know. Yeah. Somebody did, and I was like, okay, so somebody's hunting them because they are. I remember in Guam, and it's hard enough there as it is, but you see that. I mean, they're such a cool fish, but yeah, they are smart and they will stay away. I mean, you're literally tucked behind a coral head. Yeah. What size of fish were you guys getting out there? Were they, I imagine, to me, I think it's like Jurassic Park because it's so far away. You must have been
Yeah,
getting monsters.
yeah. The one I got was like I shot one the day before that was a little bit bigger. It wasn't way bigger, but it was bigger, and I didn't weigh it, so I don't have an honest answer for you on that. But
Yeah.
the second one I got, I weighed it, and I think it weighed in just under 16 pounds. It was a good sized fish.
Dude, what a beautiful fish.
Yeah, a super hard hunt, man. But once you figure out how to hunt them, they're not so bad.
Yeah.
And in
Well,
that
let me know.
particular on that particular spot, we had like really clear water, which works to your advantage, but also works to your disadvantage because now they can see you too, right?
Right.
Obviously, so
Yeah.
it kind of fucks you a bit. But the way we were diving was is like the canyon was like drifting, like a real slow, like maybe 1 knot current, and the floor in between like the pinnacles, like these rises that would come up and down, the floor was like at I want to say about 80 feet or so, and the top of the coral was like about 75, maybe 70 feet. So it would rise up pretty high and then it would gently slope back down. So if you've seen the long-nosed emperors in one of those, like one of the deep ravines, you would swim down in the one ahead of it, layer on the bottom for about 35 to 40 seconds, swim up the top to one of the ravines and then back down it, and you could pin them down on that. But if you land in the one they're in, they just fucking skittish off and you're done. You'll never get them. So if you
Okay. That's
swim
kind
down,
of like a, yeah,
yeah,
that's kind of like Moo a little bit, where we would dot. Well, we wouldn't necessarily actively go after him like that, where you have the tactical advantage, looking down. But
yeah,
we would go in like, hey, you see me, disappear in a crack or disappear,
yeah,
and then watch them come over the hill, come over
yeah.
the reef, and it's like, boom, you just silhouetted yourself. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to do is like I would try to get like that tactical down shot on them, and then I mean you're using blue water guns, so you got plenty of range.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So skipping, uh, mixing up a little bit here with
Hmm.
you. Do you have anything like in the future goals? I know you travel so much. Do you have any particular places that you have your eye on that you want to go to? But also, are you thinking about developing any more equipment based on your experience? In
So as far as some equipment, man, I'm working on a little bit more of like some of the travel items, like to make travel spearfishing and the stuff a bit easier and better for what we're doing. And I feel like the market's really lacking a bit of that stuff. So I'm working on some stuff like that. And then the first part of your question, I really want to start focusing on and exploring some of like the South Pacific areas of like Fiji, Tahiti, that kind of stuff, and not like the go-to places like those remote outer islands, and kind of do it the old school way where you kind of camp on a beach and find the local fishermen to take you.
that, I love that. That's
Yeah.
my thing, man. That's where I feel like the knowledge is gained, but that's just the best. I almost feel like it for me. I don't know how it is for you, but it's like going back to being a kid, where it's like you just do it. You didn't have any contacts. There was no phones. There was no internet, so you just had to
Yeah.
go and find shit out.
Hmm.
And you just need some time, I would say. And like, I feel
Yeah.
like
I mean,
as we get older, we have more
it
time.
can be frustrating. And I think that's where that's why the guides are so great at what they do now is because they have the recipe figured out. And a lot of us don't have that time anymore, and myself included, but that's kind of where I'm going to shift it back to is I really just want to explore some of that area and do it that way.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like going to a resort versus like a camp on a
Yeah.
beach or something. Like I've just never been a resort person. Um,
Oh,
so I just want to be hanging out with the locals and just learning the kind of thing.
yeah.
Um,
Fuck resorts and fuck cruise ships.
yeah, it's like going to Cabo San Lucas. It's like, oh, let me hang around with the same motherfuckers I would hang around with in Southern California. Oh, for 3 times the price that I could go probably an hour north of here and just hang out with a local dude. And do I want to pay $1,800 for a week or $600 for a week?
Yeah, exactly.
So I do, yeah. To each his own, but that's definitely not me. So
Same.
yeah, yeah. You were talking
But I
about
also there's something to be said about a 5-star resort and not getting eaten by bugs all night too. That's kind of nice. So
100. Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
get it.
yeah, yeah. My wife, like, that's where I'm like, okay. I
Yeah,
definitely have the trips with the boys, and then the trips with we're gonna stay in a night. I mean, my wife's pretty good about that stuff, but still, it's like, yeah, maybe she's onto something. This is kind of comfortable. Like, fucking,
yeah. Myself and yourself included. I don't think I've ever heard of someone complaining about a comfortable bed at night.
no, no, yeah. I complain about the price maybe, but that's about it.
Oh yeah, I'll bitch about everything, but
Yeah.
still not the actual bed.
Oh yeah. The fucking I'll tell you, I was in Nicaragua one time and the mosquito, I mean, we were in a fairly cheap place. But you know, they had those mosquito nets and stuff and
Yeah.
no AC or anything. And,
Yeah,
you
it'll
know,
humble the fuck out of you, man, when you see
yeah,
mosquitoes, hummingbirds.
dude, you realize some of these places, man, you're not in fucking Southern California. It's like, hey, go for a walk. Oh, you might want to put some shoes on. And then you turn your light on and you look at the fucking ground and there's like, oh, there's a tarantula. There's this. You kick this is going to, you know.
200 weird fucking land crabs marching around, leaf cutter ants everywhere. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Standing there like,
Sleeping in your jungle hammock and you're hot as fuck and you feel like you're going to die from the heat exhaustion. You're like, I just got to get out of here and get some fresh air. And then you open up your fucking hammock and you're like, oh, fuck that. Stay in here and piss on myself. Fuck it.
so it's funny because everything you just said I relate to. I totally.
Yeah,
So you've done it before.
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, all those
man.
trips in Panama was like camping on the beach in those fucking jungle hammocks.
I was going to say that's exactly what we did in Nicaragua. It was cheap, but it was, 2 weeks. It was like, yeah, you get acclimated by the other week, but god damn, you're
Yeah, I
miserable,
think I
man.
still have bug bite scars from that fucking trip. Just kidding, but holy shit, man.
Dude, I don't know what it is. I wonder if like locals, like at some point they get their blood, something gets acclimated, but they're not getting bit as much. Or if it's the fact that like I'm white or something and it's like, fuck this guy, I don't know how that goes down. But
Yeah, I'm
the
not
first
sure.
month is a miserable.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. The first like it is absolutely awful there, man. And there's like the part about jungle camping and doing some of that shit is like there's no fucking relief, man. The water's hot as fuck, the air's hot as fuck. Like there's no fucking ice water to like cool down with. It's just fucking.
Oh man.
By the end of that trip, you're definitely questioning your fucking sanity.
Yeah, and you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? And it's
Yeah,
more of like you shoot your fish, it's relief.
More importantly, I paid to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man. My wife, she was like, and this is how daddy chooses to spend his time. When she told my daughter, I was like, yeah, I thought I was fucked on that one. I thought I was going to die, whatever it was, anyways. So, with Neptonics, how would you say like your growth? Cause you guys have your stores out here and I know you have partnerships, correct?
Yeah, so we closed down the stores in Ventura and Long Beach during COVID. Right was going around. So
that makes sense.
yep.
Good old California. All right. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay. So what do you do with all that? With all that product, you just take it back and inventory it and throw it in your regular.
Yeah, so
gear?
those were their own entities, and we just closed it down, and the main Neptonics here in Tampa purchased it all back and put it back in inventory here.
Okay. Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I just think of jobs and people, anyways.
Fucking terrible.
Yeah. So in the future, do you have any like, and I don't know if you can talk about it, like any business things that you're going to do to try to keep Neptonics growing, like marketing strategies or just product strategies? I know we already talked about things like you were going to do to try to like down the future to try to keep making stuff better. And we talked about the bungees and things like that. But from a spearfishing industry business standpoint, like it seems like there's 5 people that spearfish, and even worse, 4 of those people don't want to fucking spend any money unless it's like, I don't know, unless it's a gun or something. I don't know, but it's a really funny industry.
Yeah, man. Honestly, man, like I don't have any secret recipe or strategy to what you're asking, man. Like I go diving, I try to see what's missing or what can be made better, and I go from there. Like I don't have like a roadmap out like Apple does, where there's iPhone 48 on the fucking shelf already. They're waiting. You know what I mean? Like they've made ours break, so buy another $1,000 phone. I go diving and figure out what we need or what's not working right and make it better or attempt to make it better.
Right on. So along those lines, I mean, you're a business owner. What is for you? I mean, you still work at the store. Obviously, you're not pawning it off on everybody.
I don't.
What are some big things that you participate in? Because I know, like, was it DEMA and all that stuff that they do for diving? Are you constantly having to do you travel a lot for that stuff, or is it just mainly for spearfishing trips, or both?
A bit of both. I do the trips. I still do some of the dailies in here, like some, just to make sure everything's still the way it should be or working the way it is. But yeah, I spend a lot of time in the shop. I travel to DEMA. What little bit of shows that are left, I try to go to them and set up at them. I try to go to the local tournaments and see everybody and say hi, and try to do some events here once in a while, like whether it's workshops or a fundraiser outside or something like that,
Yeah. One of the things that I think that what I like what you're doing, and I I tried to do something like that, and then I saw you guys just kind of took it and ran, which I thought was awesome. Was the your university, Spearfishing University?
Oh, it's
Right?
the
Or
Neptonics Fishing Academy.
yes, dude. There's so to everybody, and I'll say this. I mean, because I honestly don't look at anybody as a competitor or anything, but it's like there's so much good information and blogs, and that all in that one spot. Such a great idea. And I literally was trying to do, my courses and stuff, and as you're doing it, you're like, holy shit, there is so much information on there that you could do, like topics like, oh, this type of gun, this type of gun, this type of gun. It's like an endless blog supply of shit. Like, it's awesome. So what I noticed is I did it, through my videos and stuff. And then you guys, just started just doing it with your blogs, but there's so much good information on there. So I don't even have a question. It's just the fact that I love it, because I see it, I'm like, oh, that's fucking simple, dude. It's all right there. It's a library, and it's like, I'm actually writing a book, which is kind of comical. I know. I'm trying to get somebody maybe to write it for me, because I realized this fucking, it's about 200
or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, dude, because it's going to be about 200 pages. And it's all, I went from like writing a book about spearfishing in California to, no, I don't want to do that. And, try to be respectful of certain things and like not blow up particular spots or anything, but just spearfishing 101, like how to spearfish, like for people like kind of what, not quite what, geez, I'm drawing a blank. Terry Moss did, where he's like, hey, all that stuff. And so I just started writing like articles. So like when I was writing my blogs, I was like, I wonder if I could just put it all into one book. So make it like a book on like, hey, how to hunt yellowtail, all this stuff.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good book. I'm not sure how you're going to get that under 200 pages.
Dude, that's exactly what I found, which is why I'm like, can someone write this shit for me? Because this, like, I don't have time for this.
You could have close to 150 pages on yellowtail and sea bass alone.
And that's literally what, and then, so it's going to start with like, gear, safety gear, like basically with my course, but just a written version of it. And,
sure.
Good God, dude. And I was like, what you could do is literally take those blog posts. There's so much information. You could take those blog posts and turn them into a fucking book. And I was like, well, I'm just going to turn my course into a book. And then I started writing it. And yeah, dude, I mean, there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
Well, there's just so much stuff to tell. There's so many. You've been diving for how long? Since you were 6 or something, right?
Yeah, man. My dad got me into spearfishing when I was 5. So fuck 40 years now, man.
Yeah, and I've been going on and off, probably like proper spearfishing. I was some time in the military and all that stuff, but like on and off since, I don't know, 8 maybe.
Sure.
Just snorkeling and all that shit, right? And we'll get to this in a second. But it's like we take for granted, I think, our information until you start writing it down. And then I'm like, but holy fuck, man. Like, no wonder why. And I know us, I include us in the same category, but I know it's like we're constantly still researching, reading, trying to fucking talk to friends, trying to like you said, going on your trips, better your gear. So to put that in words, it would be like the encyclopedia, dude. It's fucking wild.
There's not a way to get it into a book, but that was like I wouldn't say half, 70% of my problems with Neptonics is disinformation that customers have. They'll call up, well, so-and-so, I saw this article on this YouTube video, and I'm like, oh, fuck, man. Like,
well, what would you say? That's a great question.
I need to use this float line for this. And I'm like, that guy hasn't shot a fish over 50 pounds, man. Like, I'm not saying what he's saying is wrong or won't work, but why are you why would you hire a fat personal trainer? Like, the
Right.
fuck are you doing? Like, you don't go in the gym and be like, oh yeah, you look like shit. I'll take your advice. Who
I
does
like
that?
this version of Jerry. I like
Who
this
the
version of
who the
Jerry.
fuck does that?
Right. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
a
you
walking fucking business card.
you teach me how to lose weight? Like, fuck off.
Yeah,
You're
you're
gonna
a
find the
walking
guy.
business
You're
card.
gonna find like the guy or the girl who's jacked as fuck and looks the way you want to look. I'm like, all right, man, fucking teach me.
Yeah. No, I fucking agree 100%. What would you say are some of the biggest things that you come across? Because I can
Using
argue, I get in these conversations all the time where I'm like,
using air floats or not atmosphere floats for big blue water fish. Using Home Depot float ropes instead of float lines, and it getting tangled. All kinds of like weird shit like that. Oh, 200-pound mono should work fine for a 400-pound or for a 200-pound yellowfin tuna. It's rated the same strength. I'm like, just like that kind of shit. And it's
yeah, and I
literally
think that comes from fishing, right? They're like,
like,
oh, well, fishermen use it. You're like,
exactly.
yeah,
But they're not wrong. Fishermen do use it. Well, a
right.
flopper shaft should be like, oh, I'm going to go to the Keys this weekend and shoot wahoo because they're running. My 55-inch, my Rife 110 Euro will work fine for that. I'm like, well, pole spears work for wahoo if you're a good enough hunter, but you've never done this before. You might want something with a little bit more range in blue water.
Yeah,
So,
it's fucking great, dude. Okay, let's talk about this. We've had
so
the
that's literally my hardest thing. So, in the process of that, that's where the Neptonics Spearfishing Academy came from. And everything I've done in there, I've done 100% one thing on that thing that's in common is everything on there is facts.
yeah, and I think there's two things to consider too with people: what
Mhm.
can work and what will work. So,
Exactly.
like, yeah, you can do it. Like, I make a lot of my own shit. A lot of my own shit I made from failure and all this other stuff. But like, I
Yeah.
know what will work and what can't. So the problem is, yeah, you can shoot a wahoo. You can shoot it. Yeah, you can shoot a wahoo. Yeah, but will you
Yeah.
shoot the wahoo? And will you have your
Yeah.
shit together when you see that wahoo?
Or more importantly, you can shoot it all day long because that doesn't mean you'll land it.
Right. That's what I'm. Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, 100-pound wahoo will swim in front of you. Yeah, you can
I
shoot
saw
it.
I saw a guy in a video. He got like a 200-pound yellowfin with a Rob Allen 110. I'm like, you don't hunt like that guy.
Right. Yeah.
Not
And
many people do.
right. And the other thing to it is like, fuck, man, everybody gets lucky. I mean, we all have stories of like, holy shit, that barely, like I got lucky. Um, so I don't, do you want to be lucky and miss, that's rare? Or do you want to like spend all this fucking money, go on this trip and say, okay, good to go. Like we
Yeah.
got it. Like, um, yeah, it's funny how many people out there have an opinion. And I think a lot of too is they see shit on social media where people will post like, dude, I
Sure.
almost fucked up and shot, a bluefin with a reel gun, which has happened because they're diving on patties and the fucking bluefin rolls in. So people are like, fuck it,
It's a
and
terrible idea.
yeah, and somebody pulled it off. It's like it doesn't fucking make it a good idea. That's why Chris Rock said, right? I can drive a fucking car with my knees. Doesn't make it a good idea. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I
fucking
agree with that.
sketchy, man. But yeah. So I prefer to be prepared and not have to, because you just never know what swims in front of you. But do you have any thoughts on like cable versus Dyneema? Because I kind of go back and forth on that.
For what fish? And where
Great
are we hunting?
question.
Let's go
Yes.
there.
So let's say you're hunting big grouper that go to that go in caves, fish like that. Do you prefer Dyneema or
Like
cable?
if I'm so the best way I can sum that up is if I'm hunting yellowfin tuna, if I'm hunting bluefin tuna, dogtooth tuna, I personally like that real heavy, like 1,000-pound spectra spliced or cable. If I'm hunting around structures, a deeper wreck. If I'm hunting around an oil rig or like one of those like Loran towers or something like that, I'm automatically using cable.
Yeah. And what are the factors that decide that?
So in my experience, big yellowfin, big bluefin, big doggies, they all have one thing in common is you're about to sign up for an endurance fight, right? So you have to have something that can withstand that battle for up to 2 hours. And at that point, you start coming into where your gear starts failing will be on wear points of like where it meets the shark fin tab, of where your slip tip is onto your slide ring. So that's where stuff like can start failing, which is where those heavy Spectra lines or the stainless steel cable, they don't chafe and break. Where like a thin Dyneema, like even though it's rated to 600 pounds, it will fail at some point on those big fish during a 2-hour battle. On a wahoo that's 60 pounds that you're going to fight for 7-8 minutes, it's a big fish with a lot of power, but it's not that endurance fish.
Right. That's a good point.
And then to answer your question about those big grouper, you typically those big groupers are shot in the sand and they go into a cave, and that cave is going to wreck that Dyneema. So I'm automatically using cable on those things because once again now we're going to structure.
Good rules, good rules. And again, to everybody, I've gotten lucky with Dyneema because I've managed to stone it or fucking spine it, you know. And so it's like it's one of those like, woo, I'm lucky. Great. So that being said, crimping. Do you have any tools for crimping, or can you teach? I don't know if you guys have done a write-up on this yet, but how to properly crimp cable versus Dyneema. Do you
I don't crimp Dyneema at all.
Okay.
And I'll explain to you why. I have not done a video on it, but I will make a video this week or early next, and I will do a write-up for the Academy as well, because this is a good topic. Crimping Dyneema, I think, is foolish. And one reason why is it is a dynamic line that stretches. So unless you can crimp that under load, at some point a big fish will pull that fucker loose. So just tie the knot and be done with it. If you know how to tie knots and you're good at knots, you can tie a knot like a double figure 8 that will only reduce the strength of that line by like 20% or so. So if you have a 1,000-pound line, you're only taking 20% off. It's still 800-pound strength. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. And so people are going to say, wait, Dyneema doesn't stretch. Dyneema does stretch. If you look it up, it does stretch.
It says it doesn't stretch.
Now, it says that the problem with Dyneema is it's bad in a dynamic load because it doesn't stretch like mono. So Correct. It's tight. I mean, it's quick, right? But it does stretch, especially as it gets wet. If it doesn't stretch, then I would challenge anybody that doesn't think it doesn't stretch. How come when you take your gun and it's nice and tight with Dyneema, you get in the water and you got to tighten down that reel a little bit because it stretches.
Yep. Or your breakaway doesn't fit. Again, now it's too long, right? So yeah, we can go play this game all day long, but it does.
Yeah. No, good shit. Cable does not stretch.
Yeah, I know what the science says, but sometimes it's just wrong.
Right. Let's not get into that whole fuck. Okay. No. So, did you want to talk about crimping cable right now?
Sure. If you're using coated cable, I personally like coated cable. And the only reason I like coated cable over the bare cable is when you're actually fighting your fish, it doesn't want to fucking rip through your gloves and cut your hands up.
Yes.
So that's the only reason. I don't feel like one shoots better than the other. And so there's no really argument to that, in my opinion. I also like when you have the coated cable, that little layer of plastic or whatever it is that they put over it, they say it's silicone, but it's not fucking silicone. It's some kind of plastic, in my opinion. When you shoot bare cable and it wants to like splinter and thread, you can't necessarily see that happen. And when you're going to fight your fish, you'll get those stupid cable shards in your fingers and in your hands, and that hurts like a son of a bitch. Nothing like so just something to be aware of there.
Or when you cut it, when you're crimping and you fucking don't get all the shards and you step on one, that feels great.
The pain in the ass too.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, when you're cutting that, like measure it off, cut it off with a razor blade or wire strippers, like an electrician would, right? And then make sure that you're crimping the bare cable, and then use as tight of a crimp as you can. So you definitely don't want to use like the 480-pound cable. You want to use a crimp that is properly sized to it by millimeters, not by the poundage test. Those crimps are measured out in the pounds when you would buy them for mono, not for cable. So 480-pound cable is actually is the same diameter as what 300-pound mono is. So just keep that in mind. Like, so if my memory serves me right, so don't quote me on this, I should know this. 400-pound mono is like 2 millimeter, and 300-pound mono is like 1.6 millimeters. So you want to use a crimp that's like 1.7 to 1.8 and not that 2.0, otherwise it'll slip off. And then always double crimp it. Use copper crimp so it actually meshes into that stainless steel aircraft cable properly.
And
don't be afraid to change your gear. If you go on 1 or 2 trips and like look at your gear, if like the copper crimps are corroded a little bit, if there's rust on there, just cut it off and put new stuff on. And no, it's not me trying to sell you fucking $1.50 worth of cable and crimps, like trying to like make you land your fish.
yeah. Also, as far as crimping, with cable, I've heard you crimp the end on the cable, where you wouldn't do that with mono because you're more like a cut in the mono. Is that
Correct?
Is that yeah? Okay, just
Yeah,
sanity check there.
I crimp mine the same way, just out of habit and consistency. But
Uh-huh.
you can crimp that and not worry about cutting the cable. Where if you crimp the end of mono like that,
It's done. Yeah.
yeah. That's
Well,
that's a bad day for you.
oh, wonderful, Jerry. I'm loving the dialogue and the it's fucking great. Um, no, it is. It's great because it's like I get, dude. There is so much stuff out there, and
Mhm.
it's really a very simple thing. This is very fucking simple, people. Like, and I'm not talking down to any of you guys, but it's very simple. They're just rules to this shit, and if you just follow the rules, do you want to be prepared or not? Like, I feel like when you get along in your journey, as you get like spearfish forever, it's like, yeah, you start getting complacent. But then
Mhm.
every now and then it reminds you, hey, fuckface, you got to follow the rules. And it's
Yeah,
happened to me,
it's
or you
happened
get
to all.
caught with, yeah, or you get caught with your pants down because you're on a reef hunting a certain species, and then, some freaking tuna come in and you're not prepared for that. So that's when you get reminded of that usually sometimes, and that reel's screaming. You're like, that was a bad idea. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I also found with cable, with their sharks, I always just do cable just because depending on how crazy they are,
Mhm.
they'll just, then you lose your shaft and a fucking slip tip. And, it's just like,
Yeah, that sucks.
yeah.
Yeah, the only time where I've had cable a handful of times like work against me, man, is like I shot a doggy and it got down on the damn reef and the cable didn't cut on the reef and all that thing got pinned up and tied up at like 170, 180 feet. So it's just a big pain in the ass to go down there and retrieve it. And eventually you get it all fucking figured out. Like the buoys come back up with the currents but man, is it a pain in the ass.
So
At
is
some
that,
point, like it's nice to have the specter of the Dyneema fucking cut, man.
I do agree with that because that's the one thing that gives me the heebie jeebies about it is, and is that, yeah, in the stressful situation, shit's going south. That thing cinches down on you, and people think, I was like, you're getting dragged through the water. Good luck grabbing your knife. If you've ever been dragged through the water or had stuck on a reef and got a wave drag you, like, you're not grabbing shit. Uh,
Yeah.
well, you can. It's just you got your work cut out for you, and then meanwhile, you're going deeper and deeper and deeper.
So like a good scenario is right, like you run it through your mind, like because I'm sure we all keep our dive knives super sharp, like we're supposed to, right? Most
Right.
of them.
No.
So let's just say that you're lucky enough to have a brand new dive knife on you, and something gets tangled up on your wrist or on your ankle, and it starts pulling you around. So now you are probably at the end of your dive. Maybe you're not. Like who knows? We'll just say that you're in the middle of your dive because you're probably not the beginning of your dive if this is happening at 50 or 60 feet, right? So let's just say that you're halfway into your dive. You get this half hitch that forms around your ankle. You got some kind of blue water fish pulling you deeper. And now you're going to try to like deal with that panic situation and do underwater yoga while trying to equalize and try to fiddle with a fucking knife and cut cable. So,
Yeah.
not an impossible task, but doesn't sound real fucking fun either.
And if you've ever shot a pelagic that sounds, do the math. You have, if that thing's, I mean, know it sounds in a matter of like fractions of a second, the distance covered. That's the same distance you're going to be going down. And with the water resistant, you're going to be basically in a river, trying to grab. I mean, I just know because it's happened to a few people that I know that were lucky enough to have those things rip off of them, fins and whatnot. And I always play through these scenarios like, how realistic is this? Tourniquets, also things like that. People are like, oh, I got a tourniquet on the boat. Motherfucker, by the time you get back to that boat, you believe you're done.
If your fucking injury is bad enough where you need a tourniquet, you better hope that injury happens on the boat.
Yeah. It's because you're talking about 30 seconds, maybe. I mean, 30 seconds. And if you do that,
Man,
So you,
so I'm not a medic, no claim to be, right? But like pulling back to like military medical training, if you have an arterial wound, like you have like seconds, man. Like
yeah,
you're not 8 minutes away from the boat where your tourniquet's at.
you're
I mean,
literally a water fountain, right? Not a water fountain. Yeah, worse. No, like a water hose of
yeah.
blood coming out of you, and you only have so much in there.
And I reckon it's better to have it on the boat than not have one at all. But holy shit, you got to react quick. But I think there's some other stuff too, like something bad happens like that, and you have a wetsuit on, like don't take the wetsuit off and shit like that. Obviously,
Right.
maybe your dive buddy's got his head on his shoulders, hopefully, and maybe they can take off a weight belt possibly, or maybe they can cut a band off a spear gun and use that as something makeshift till the damn real tourniquet and the boat gets there. I don't know. And I'm just kind of spitballing at the damn scenario right now.
Yeah. So my thing is, the tourniquet, if it's on your weight belt, great. But can you get it off your weight belt while you're in a panic because you've probably been attacked? Let's be honest, you probably were attacked by a shark or shot or cut or something. Can you get it off your weight belt within Can you get it off your weight belt? Put it over your, let's say it's it's on your femur, your leg. Can you get it over your fin? Because your fin's probably, or get your fin off. Can you get over your fin, get it on there, and clamp it down in time? I think you can do it, but I don't think if you don't run through the scenario, I think you'll be amazed. I think people will be amazed at what an absolute clusterfuck it'll be. And you'll realize the first time you try it, you'd be dead. Like, you know,
Man, I don't that that sounds like an awful idea, man. I
yeah,
couldn't imagine like I just couldn't imagine like wearing a tourniquet on my dive belt trying to take that thing off in time in a bad situation like that.
yeah, I know people that attach it with rubber bands. So they just pull it off, right?
Sure.
Which would be, that's great. But I don't know, because I thought about it, with diving Coronados and stuff in different places and just in life. And I guess I'm getting older. Gray whites, there seems to be more of them. I don't know. But it's just a reality. So if you get bit, where would you get bit? Likely, where, if it's because I know the guy that died in Solana Beach by our house that got chomped, he was swimming. It just severed his friggin' artery right on his legs, were shredded. And I don't think there was a fucking thing you could do to save that guy. But by the time they got him to the beach, he said he was like just white. He was just no blood in him. He just bled out like a fish, like us, right? So I don't know, even if you were standing there with a tourniquet, he gets hit, could you do it? I think maybe you could if there's one wound and it's not severed it so much so that that artery doesn't retract up into his body. And again, I'm not like a paramedic, but same thing. We did some training. Um, you know, it's a nice warm fuzzy to have, that for sure. But there's just so many scenarios where it's like, man, if it's in your arm, yeah, you could probably throw it on your arm. But the thing is, people are funny where they like to put knives on one arm or the other. It's like, well, what happens when the other arm gets stuck, or you're holding onto this, you can't grab this, or whatever it is.
For sure.
But yeah, so I think the message is, we're just bullshitting here, but I think the message is run through fucking scenarios in your head and then rig your shit accordingly. To set you up for the best possible. Maybe you got a 1% chance, but you're just saying there's a chance. Like,
Yeah, man, I don't know. I think that kind of like falls back to some other Marine Corps military stuff, right? Like, most of us in this sport, like we were talking earlier, like are typically that type A alpha male personality, right? And most of us will think when something bad happens, we'll just rise to the occasion, right?
right.
But the hard reality of it is all it's going to do is bring you to your level of training. So if you haven't ran that scenario and tried it and practiced it 100 times, you're going to find yourself in a fucking panic, anxious situation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that includes, for the guys that own boats and stuff too. And I had someone on the show, Brett Label, who he propped a guy, that whole thing. But the scenarios that are the medical emergencies, it doesn't have to be a shark attack, right? It can be a stabbing, it could be anything, cut, whatever. If you haven't gone through, people don't even know how to use the radio on a boat. And if you haven't gone through these little easy scenarios, you're going to save yourself a lot of stress if you just go through it or write it down for everybody. Or even your dive buddy, just go over, hey, what if, even if it's 5 minutes, but at work we would do it, right? We had to do it often. Like even as a civilian contractor, we would go through quarterly training and we'd have to get somebody out of the water. We'd have to do this. We'd have to call, channel 16, activate EMS, do this. And it's all fun and games until one day we were out of offshore fucking around. And then we had a medical emergency and everybody had the deer in the headlights, except for a couple of us that had been doing the dive training because we came from different jobs. And it was like, okay, go, go, go. And it was like, man, you're so calm. It was like, well, all you can do is fucking just, the training does take over. It's a real thing. I know it's cliche to be the military stuff, but it does work.
It does definitely sound a bit cliche. I completely agree with that. But I mean,
it does work.
Martial arts is a good example, right? Like, you practice jujitsu enough, and sooner or later, like it's just muscle memory of how to do it.
Right.
I mean, martial arts is probably the best example outside of the military of something of just repetition, right? Like you practice how to do something that many times, and sooner or later you know how to do it. But
yeah,
it's just like anything else with freediving. There's so many guys like do this. Like I practice every day. I'm like, practice makes perfect. I'm like, that's kind of bullshit. Like perfect practice will make perfect. You do something wrong 7 times, and all you do is teach yourself how to do it wrong, bro. Good luck.
Yeah, I actually, people will say like, oh, he's been a boat captain of 30 years experience. And I was like, well, if he's been fucking it up for 30 years, that doesn't mean anything,
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jerry, I got to run, but
Cool.
I'm glad we can make this work. We need to do this more often. Thanks for all the tips. And you guys check, if you don't know, Jerry, Neptonics is a sponsor of the show. And I think we talked about, I don't even remember how it came up being the sponsor of the show, but I don't blow smoke up people's ass and I don't give a shit about shitty products. But I will say that everything I've gotten from Neptonics, I thought it was first of all, the website's great. It's easy to figure out. But also all the stuff you get there is fucking no bullshit, good priced, fair priced, good quality stuff. There's no Chinese and I don't mean like Chinese made, overseas made, like shitty stuff where you're going to buy a fucking $40 float line and then it snaps and you find out there was like, string inside, the kite string inside it, which has happened to people. All good shit. So this is why I give, first of all, I love Jerry, but this is why I'm on the show, but this is why I give Neptonics a platform because it's good shit. So, yeah, be sure to check out Neptonics, you guys. And Jerry, where can everybody find out more information about you personally and your business?
The business is absolutely Neptonics.com. It's got it all. There's personally, there's some stuff on there that was well, and then other than that, just social media, unfortunately.
Right on. And what's your Instagram account?
My personal Instagram account is Blue Water Sensations, and then obviously there's the Neptonics Worldwide.
Yeah, and check out those big doggies on there too. Fuck, it's crazy. Oh man, you guys on the beach. I remember seeing that picture. I was like, God damn, that's a lot of meat.
Yeah, that was a really special experience, man.
I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 doggies. The small one on that drift was like 157 when you're calling a 157-pound fish small,
Dude, and the other thing is they're 150-pound doggies. Like I've seen doggies fight, 80-pound doggy fight or whatever, 70-pound doggy fight, and I cannot imagine just fucking multiplying that. That is the one fish I pulled the trigger on, and I was like, oh, that's why everybody says about that. But going back to that, that's why you have your shit made. Like you do not have a kink in your armor with that fish. Like,
yeah, man. If you have a gear failure because of the reef, there's nothing you can do about it, man. But if you have a gear failure in blue water, open water with that fish, that's because you fucked up.
Yeah, 100%. Because a bad shot or yeah. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it, brother. Yeah, go ahead.
On those 3 biggies, man, not many people realize this, and I don't get real like weird about the moons too much. But those 3 fish were shot exactly within 20 minutes of high tide on the full moon. Like the fucking
was that May? Was that May?
That was in November.
Okay.
It was in November. And what was really interesting about that, man, is we had done like 15, 18 drifts over that spot and seen nothing. And I literally went down and there was literally as far as you could see left, right, and forward and back at like 50 feet was 140 to 170 plus pound doggies, like just everywhere, and plenty of them way bigger than the ones we shot. You just didn't have the shot.
Right.
It's fucking crazy as hell, man.
Well, it's funny because the part of the Pacific I was in, I mentioned this before in the show, but like somebody had shared in their story, they were rigging all their shit up for doggies for the next
Yeah.
day. And then he was in a different part of the Eastern or Western Pacific. And I was in another part of the Western Pacific. We were rigging our shit up. And it was all just from a bunch of experience we've had over the years of going, and I was doing deployments there. And somebody else was in another part, and they were doing the same shit, and it was the same thing. May, full moon, low going to high, and it was just comical because I just started seeing everybody like randomly post like getting ready for dog, getting ready. I'm like, so everybody's figured this fucking shit out. Like as far as this area of the world, like
Sure.
this like that fish is like follows the rules. I guess it's funny, man, how. It's funny how every now and then the shit actually works. You know, you're like, you follow these things and it shows up. You're like, okay.
Yeah, like doggies at one fish, I'm not so sure yet. Like I've shot a decent amount of them now and landed a decent amount of big ones, but I'm still not so sure if that's a full moon or a new moon fish. Like being that they're a deep water, dark water fish, I feel like the new moon might still be a bit better for them.
Could be. I mean, it would make sense.
Full, but who knows, man? Like,
yeah,
that might just matter to where the hell that location is that you're hunting too.
And that's the other thing. It does vary. That's why I thought it was so funny when someone was in another area doing the same thing. I was like, okay, so that's true on this area. Okay, it's true here. That's kind of cool. But yeah, every reef was different. I remember that, but that's mainly reef fish too. But all right, Jerry, I got to run. But thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right, good to see you too. All right, bye.
See you, bye.